You know that financial advice you hear all the time? The stuff that sounds so right, but deep down something just feels a little off? Well, today we're going to bust the biggest money myths that are holding people back one by one. All right, let's jump right in. Yeah, we're kicking things off with this one for a reason. It taps into a really powerful human emotion, that deep desire for safety. We all want to know our money is secure, right? But here's the kicker. What if that feeling of security is actually a total illusion? So that brings us to our first big theme, how our natural instinct to play it safe with our money can end up being a surprisingly expensive mistake. Okay, so first up on the chopping block is this idea that cash sitting in a bank account is the ultimate risk-free move. It feels so secure, doesn't it? But let's dig into why that's a really dangerous way to think. And this right here, this is the perfect example of your feelings versus cold, hard math. On one hand, you look at your bank account and the number is the same. It hasn't gone down. That feels safe. But the reality is that this invisible force, inflation, is constantly shrinking what that money can actually buy. The number in your account hasn't changed, not one bit. But what you can buy with that money, yeah, that's getting smaller every single day. Just think about that for a second. Over a decade, that safe cash you're holding on to could lose a quarter of its value. You're basically choosing the absolute certainty of losing a little bit every year over the potential for your money to actually grow. When you're playing a long game, that's a guaranteed loss. All right, on to the next one. This is a classic. You've probably heard it from your parents a million times. We've all heard it. Stop throwing money away on rent. You're just paying someone else's mortgage. This really gets to the heart of what people miss about owning a home. The myth focuses on building equity, and that sounds fantastic. But the reality? That mortgage payment is just the cover charge. You've got property taxes, insurance, and then the fun stuff, a new roof, a broken furnace. Those costs are unpredictable and they never ever stop. Look, when you're renting, you're not just throwing money away, you're buying something incredibly valuable. Flexibility and freedom from a surprise $15,000 bill for a new roof. And that actually leads us perfectly into our next big illusion. This little mental trick we all play on ourselves to justify huge purchases by calling them something they're not. Come on, we've all been there. You drop a massive amount of money on a new car, and to make yourself feel better, you call it an investment. An investment in reliability, or your commute, or your image. It's a nice little mental trick to make ourselves feel better about dropping a ton of cash. But get this. A brand new car can lose up to 20% of its value the literal second you drive it off the lot. An investment is supposed to, grow, not take a nosedive the second you get the keys. It's really simple when you break it down. An investment makes you money. A car, unless we're talking about some ultra-rare collectible, only costs you money. It's a tool, it's an expense. A very useful one, sure, but it is absolutely not an investment. Period. Okay, let's touch on a tricky one. We're always told that taking on debt for education is good debt. It's an investment in your future. But is that really always true? Look, debt is only good debt if the return on that investment actually makes sense. If it actually works out. Taking on 30 grand in debt to get an $80,000 engineering salary, yeah, that can work. But taking on $200,000 for a degree that leads to a $40,000 job, that's not an investment. That is a financial trap that can follow you for decades. All right, let's switch gears and talk about some common financial strategies that sound really smart on the surface, but are often driven more by emotion than by actual math. Oh man, the idea of being totally debt-free, it's so powerful, isn't it? And paying off your house early, that feels like the absolute peak of financial success. But, and this might sound crazy, it might not be the smartest thing you can do with your money. And it all comes down to this one key idea, opportunity cost. It's simply about what your money could have been doing instead. See, every single extra dollar you throw at that mortgage early is a dollar that could have been out there making more money for you somewhere else. Just look at the numbers. If your mortgage rate is, say, a low 3%, but the stock market's average historical return is closer to 8%, by paying off that mortgage, you're giving up the difference. You're literally choosing to get a guaranteed 3% return instead of a potential 8% return. Why would you do that? And here's another one you hear constantly. You gotta max out your 401k, get that tax advantage. But hold on, there's a much smarter order of operations, a better way to play this. Okay, so here's the actual smart money playbook. Step 1, and this is non-negotiable, get your employer's 401k match. It is literally free money, don't leave it on the table. After that, you attack and wipe out any high-interest debt that's killing you, like credit card debt. Then you build up your emergency fund so you can sleep at night, and only then do you worry about maxing out those retirement accounts. And this one tackles that big myth that you or anyone can be a genius and perfectly time the market. I mean, studies show that even the pros can't do it consistently. Get this, if you miss just the 10 best days in the market over a 20-year period, your returns can get cut in half. The secret isn't being a psychic, it's just being consistent. And that brings us to our final and maybe the most damaging myth of them all. The one excuse that stops more people from building wealth than anything else. You know the excuse I'm talking about. I don't have enough money to start investing. But that's not how it works. This quote says it all. The most powerful force in building wealth isn't how much money you have, it's how much time you have. Just look at this number. It shows you exactly what I'm talking about. That's what just $50 a month can turn into by retirement if you start when you're 25. The real mistake isn't thinking you have too little money to start. It's thinking the amount you start with matters more than the habit of just starting now. So there you have it. We've just torn down some of the biggest money myths out there. Now the only question left is the one right here on the screen. Now that you know the truth, what are you going to do about it? What's your first move?